Let's start there with just like upbringing and maybe some of those like early inspirations for you.
I grew up on the north side, uptown. My early inspiration was always my dad. You know, my dad was like a real Renaissance man. My father passed when I was young. In high school, I would say I was a little bit of an entrepreneur. What I would do is I would sell snacks out of my locker. And so that became like, I guess, my first official like small business.
What were those challenges? What were those struggles? Yeah, what were those emotions you were feeling in maybe the first 2 years? What are some of the pieces that are going to hold value long term?
My rule of thumb is always go gold heavy, like always go heavier.
How do different markets change the way you go about your business? Where do you see the industry evolving into in the next 15, 20 years even?
What I've kind of seen the last couple of years is you see a lot of people taking like the startup model for online businesses. There's a lot of potential to make money there for sure. I've always been like a networker. And so I met a lot of really interesting people that I've become pretty good friends with to this day. We were talking about jewelry. That was like my side hustle. I had a friend of mine who was an entrepreneur who's done extremely well for himself.
How do different markets change the way you go about your business?
My opinion is that
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Link Live. Yes, we've been on a little hiatus for the past 6, 7, 8 months, but for good reason. We are live here from Link Label Studios, where our new offices are, where our new HQ is. I know some of you may have seen. We can't wait to bring some studio tours to you guys on social, but it's time to bring back the podcast, time to bring back the conversations, and I'm very excited for this first episode back with a very special guest. Today we are welcomed by Ren Thompson. Really excited to get this episode out to you guys. Ren is in the private jewelry business. He's been in jewelry for the past 10 years. He's worked at anything from the big box retailers, and now over the past 4 to 5 years has started his own 7-figure private jewelry business. Ren has sold jewelry to athletes, celebrities, entertainers, and he definitely has some cool stories to back that up. We also get pretty deep and get pretty serious in this episode about what it takes to make that entrepreneurial jump. He talks about some of his early principles, his family's upbringing, and kind of what shaped him from growing up in and around the Chicagoland area to now working and having his own business in the downtown loop. So super excited for Ren to talk about these lessons, talk about his journey, and of course, inspire, uplift, and motivate you guys who are watching and are looking to do something similar. So without further ado, let's hop back into it and enjoy this episode of Link Live.
We're welcomed today by Ren Thompson. We pretty much just had a mini podcast off camera, but I'm excited to get into your story today. I'm excited to help promote your story, and I think the viewers and the audience is going to get a lot of value out of your journey up until this point. And from what I can already tell, a lot of the wisdom that you take it throughout your journey. So I'm excited to get into it. Thank you so much for being here. I want to really like peel it back though and dial it back to when you were a child, your upbringing, right? You're Chicago born and raised. There's a lot of pride that comes with that. So let's start there with just like upbringing and maybe some of those like early inspirations for you.
Yeah, man, I grew up on the north side, uptown. My early inspiration was always my dad. You know, my dad was like a real Renaissance man. You know what I mean? Like he had like 5 degrees, you know, he taught journalism, he was a painter, collected music, like literally like the most interesting person like I've ever known, right? He was a military guy, he was a Marine. And he just like instilled so much into me when I was a kid that never made sense until I became an adult. You know, like there's lessons he would preach, and it just never clicked, you know? And my father passed when I was young, and so I went to live with my grandparents in another part of the city. But as I started like going through high school, like, you know, becoming a young man, becoming a grown man, things like that, I always go back to the lessons that, you know, my dad preached, you know, like discipline and things like that. He's probably one of the inspirations why I live where I live and work where I work right now too. Like he taught at Roosevelt University on Michigan Avenue.
Yes.
And my office is like 2 blocks away, you know, and I live on Michigan Avenue as well too. So it's like, you know, I look at that as like it was like going to Beverly Hills, like kid from uptown traveling downtown to seeing all the buildings and everything. And so I was like, when I'm able to, I have to like live and work, in this neighborhood.
Nice.
Yeah.
Obviously we're going to get into it in your long-standing career now in profession and jewelry, but at what point, 'cause I feel like there's always an inflection point with someone who's an entrepreneur or a founder, like, was there an experience early on that you had, even as a child, young adult, that kind of, set that in stone for you, and you're like, I think there's something here, like, I know I'm going to do this, it has to be the right timing?
Yeah, there in high school, I would say I was a little bit of an entrepreneur. What I would do is I would sell snacks out of my locker. And so that became like, I guess, my first official like small business, if you will. But like literally I would buy like Capri Suns and whatever, fruit snacks, whatever. And my locker had like a false wall. So like the locker next to me, like our high school did like every other locker, right? And so the locker next to me was just empty. And so I had no wall there. So I was just like hide snacks. And like, I guess some kids deal drugs in high school. I was dealing Capri Suns and fruit snacks until the school shut me down, man.
It's a better way to do it for sure.
Yeah.
Love it. And then you go on to become a collegiate athlete, right? And it talks about this. How did some of the environment and culture around sports and competitive sports at a Division I level kind of like teach you that discipline? Not teach you it, but like amplify it already.
Yeah, I mean, I don't necessarily think it was about discipline, because like once you're in collegiate sports, even if you're not the most disciplined person, you're going to be forced to like go to workouts and do it. Like your coaches don't care, man. Like they're going to lay into you. But I think the biggest thing it taught me was dealing with conflict, because on the teams that I was on, I wasn't necessarily friends with everybody I was on the team with, but you have to work with people. And so it teaches you how to like literally conduct yourself, with another person that maybe you don't like them. Maybe you have like a an ulterior issue with them, but it's that taught me a lot about just like running a business, because business is the same way, vendors and whatever, peers in the industry, you're not necessarily friends with everyone all the time, but sometimes you have to work with them.
Right.
Yeah.
100%. And then you go on to graduate. What was your degree in again?
My degree was in music business and sound design. So literally nothing relating to jewelry at all, to be completely honest with you.
Talk to us about like what you did post-grad then. I know you spent some time in LA.
Yeah.
I'm sure you took a lot of influence out of their culture and such, but what were you doing in and around hospitality and music and stuff?
Yeah, to be honest with you, I hated LA. It wasn't... It just wasn't my speed, like being a Chicago kid, like living in a city, it just wasn't my speed, and I got homesick very quickly. But, studying music, went out to LA, worked for a label, got to work on things like commercials and, movies and very small stuff, work with some artists and things like that. But again, what was cool about it is I've always been like a networker. And so I met a lot of really interesting people that I've become pretty good friends with to this day. And, we were talking about jewelry. That was like my side hustle, like despite the glitz and the glamour of thinking you're going to LA to work in the music industry, there's not many people are actually making money. And so you got to find other ways to hustle. And so jewelry was like a great little side hustle, and everybody likes the idea of having a guy. And like, I just wanted to be that guy for people. And that started to spread, pretty quickly. They're like, oh, you said you like watches. Everybody's like, hey, I want to buy a watch. Anybody? And they started saying, yo, talk to Ren, or, hey, I want to make an engagement ring, or I need like a gold chain, just like stuff like that. And so I just kind of became that guy and started like getting my fingers in different pots and did it as like a side hustle for a while until I came back to Chicago and wanted to make it like my full-time gig. Yeah.
So you started doing it as a side hustle, and then you went to go work for a couple jewelers and big jewelry stores. Is that what it was? Yeah,
there was a couple stops in between there, but really what happened was that when I came back to Chicago, I was at a point where I was like, I need to figure out, like, I can't DJ forever. I can't be in the music industry forever. I want to figure out like what's a long-term career. And my biggest thing is I've always wanted a career that was creative, and I get bored easy, man. So like I just couldn't stand the idea of just like sitting in an office. It made no sense to me. And so I had to start at the bottom, man. Like I had a lot of, entrepreneurial experience, but like getting the real professional experience, understanding how like companies operate, like I just wasn't sure, So I worked for like literally some of the cheapest jewelry stores, you could say. Worked there, like started off like wiping down the cases and sweeping floors, like literally at the bottom, and then just working my way up. Worked for some fancier jewelry stores, and eventually jumped into the wholesale side, which was just like a completely different animal.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I want to get into some of those stories of how like the wholesale versus maybe like big box retail side of the business works. How long did you work for others until you started your own thing?
Oh man, it was probably 4 years, 5 years. Yeah, about 4 or 5 years before I started my own thing. And then I kind of, like a lot of people, I was kind of doing a half and half for a little bit. And then eventually just reached the point where it's like, you got to make the jump. Like you gotta jump off the diving board and see what it's like really about. And that's where things get real. When you like don't have that steady paycheck or whatever coming in, you have to like truly hustle. That's where things got really fun.
I love the jump talk because I obviously had my own story that could relate to that. But like, talk us through how old were you at that point when you had to make the jump?
Late 20s. So last handful of years. That was like terrifying, man. Like it just became there's a certain point when, I'm sure you can relate to this, it just becomes like an obsession, and you're like, I want to do this, I want to do this, I want to do this, and then you have to literally just one day go and do it. And I had a friend of mine who's an entrepreneur who's done extremely well for himself, and we were having dinner one day, and he was like, you know what, this age that I was at, he was like, this is around the time that I made the jump. And he's like, what I realized is that a lot of people talk about it, and he's like, people just continue to talk about it into their 30s. And then once they reach like their, late 30s or whatever, it's like most people it's just talk at that point. Most people are never going to do it. So he's like, if you got to do it, you got to go for it. Right. And I was like, okay, cool. And I figured worst that could happen is, I just lose a bunch of money and sleep on the street. But I know my skills are good enough where if I had to fall back on those, I could do something. I can find work. Yeah.
Yeah. I remember for me, it was like, I was at a point where I was either going to get fired from my 9 to 5. Yeah. It was just like too noticeable what I was doing, or I was going to start to lose clients. Obviously, when you're set with that, decision, you're going to go and trust your gut.
Yeah.
For so long, like I was chasing, like, there's a revenue goal I need to be looking at. What is it? But I think like deep down, if you're going through it, you have the feeling as to like, okay, it's time. It's not about the money. It's like, we're going to do this.
Yeah, it's definitely not about the money. I mean, the money's great and I love making money, but it's like, how could I know how much money I would make? Yeah, like I know what's possible, right? But I was just like, I want to take control of my own journey, and that's what made it like really, really fun. And I would talk about discipline. I try to be a disciplined person, and like I just realized that applying consistent discipline to my own personal business like really has grown me a lot.
Sure. Let's talk about some of those early years then after you did go out for yourself and commit to full time. I think like you see all this stuff online within social media with all these other podcasts that people miss the middle 60 to 70%. It's the like, yeah, you aren't always generating millions in revenue and you weren't always selling to celebrities and athletes and stuff like that. Like, yeah, I think it's those pivotal grind years where people are misconstrued online, and then the audience that we're trying to talk to, which is like aspiring entrepreneurs and founders, we're misled, right? So I like to like hone in on that section where like set the stage for how the reality of really starting something was, and like what were those challenges, what were those struggles, what were those emotions you were feeling in maybe the first 2 years?
I feel like I'm still in that stage, honestly, and I think the big emotions that I go through, or the big challenges that I see are, again, I say this a lot, but it's like discipline. When you're left to your own devices, you have to be disciplined about how you approach every single day. And so it's like, be consistent, keep putting shots up, you know what I mean? And then one of the biggest challenges early on was like collecting data. I think a lot of people are afraid to put themselves out there, but I look at that as like data collection, right? Like when you're trying to find new clients, you got to try different things, but like record what's working and what's not working. And I always double down on the things that work. Like for my business, I know that when I attend events and go out and meet new people, that almost always leads to new business. And so it's like the data would tell me, keep doing that, and you could just simply do the numbers. If you go to X amount of events, you meet X amount of people, how many sales have you generated from that over a 6-month period, and so that's something where you have to be consistent, put yourself out there, and just, kind of swallow fear, man.
Yeah. Yeah. I think those consistent habits and routine, you hear it a lot, are like the things, and it's the boring stuff that makes the biggest difference at the end of the day.
100%.
Awesome. You're at a point now where you've, sold thousands of pieces of jewelry.
Yeah.
Again, people online are buying into what they see, whether it's the New York street, New York City, like jewelry guys and Moses the jeweler and Vuka and TikTok and all this stuff. Like, I want to get an understanding, like, what pieces are you most passionate about? Like, what are you pushing? What do you see as like some of the significant design trends?
Yeah.
Whether it's an engagement ring, a bracelet, a chain, whatever that looks like. And I want to talk a little bit about like, what are some of the pieces that are going to hold value long term, right? Like, gold is a significant topic. These guys as well. Let's touch there a little bit.
Yeah, man. From a trend standpoint, like I always believe that it's hard to have a really good jewelry business if you don't move bridal jewelry, right? Like, people are always going to be getting married. It's just like a fact of life, And so for me, I love doing engagement rings, like I love making engagement rings. That's like half the fun, right? Because that's like people's most important moment in their life, right? Getting married to their partner. And so I love sharing that with people. And generally speaking, engagement brings, pretty good margins as well too. So it's good for the business as well, And so the trends always change with engagement rings. It's usually around, what center stone shape is popular, And so the easiest way to find that trend is to look at celebrities, honestly. Like, some of the big celebrities, when they get married or engaged or whatever, you see thousands of rings that look very similar, or all of a sudden that stone is super popular.
Yeah.
That's been a big one. And then to your point about like pieces that maintain value, my rule of thumb is always go gold heavy. Like, always go heavier than lighter. If you're looking for something that's going to maintain more value, some diamonds do hold value. I think the biggest issue, like when we're talking about like natural diamonds, I always get guys that are like, well, if I try to sell this in 20 years, how much money will I get for it? And it's going to vary based on the market. But the big thing is you're talking about rarity. I think it's a common misconception that diamonds are that rare. Now, obviously, there's a lot of individual characteristics to diamonds, but there are so many diamonds in the world, right? And so take like a 1 carat round diamond. If I need to find a 1 carat round diamond, I could find one in the next hour. You know what I mean? So it's not like it's that hard to find that. So if you're somebody that's looking to sell it to me, I don't necessarily need to pay top dollar for it because I know that I can get it, And so I always tell people, go gold heavy. And if you're really looking for stones, like really spend the money on like a really high quality stone, because those are the things that are harder to source. Those will carry, much more value should you want to get rid of them at some point.
Yeah. On that topic as well, I want to get really specific, because you see a lot in media as well about like this female driven sort of decision making around like a type of ring a girl wants and stuff like that. Talk about the makeup of an individual that should be in the market for a natural diamond versus maybe lab grown. Does it matter? Like, I want to dissect that, because it's like, it's a debate you see a lot on the market.
My rule of thumb always when it comes to making an engagement ring is get with what your girlfriend wants. Like, literally just ask her. Like I would say 99% of women who are ready to get married have some idea of what they want their ring to be. So get her what she wants, right? Now, the lab versus natural conversation, in my opinion, really comes down to your means, your financial means. Some people can't afford, what they want. You're talking about a 2 carat diamond. There's a very different price point in, a high quality 2 carat natural diamond versus a lab diamond. And so it really just comes down to your means and exactly what she wants. Always do that. I tell people, bring her into the process. Like, if you're going to make a custom ring, shopping, whatever it is, get her involved, really make her, feel like she's a part of that creative process, because it's not going to change anything about when you pop the question. You're still going to be equally as excited. It's still probably going to be a surprise, and so it's that's always the best way to go.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense. I'm sure. Tell us a story. I'm sure you have to have a story about like a situation where you went through the whole process, you designed a custom ring, the like individual. Yeah. I presented it to his fiance potentially, and then like she's like,
Luckily, that hasn't happened to me in my business since I've been running it. But when I was working at stores, I saw it a few times. I saw it where I've seen people return a ring, and there is like nothing more like heartbreaking than seeing a couple come in, whatever, a month or two later, and the woman is, or the guy or whoever is returning the ring because she didn't like it, man. I mean, that is like, you see the guy like so deflated, right? And then always crushing, and then she picks out whatever she likes or does something around it. But it's like that moment, I can't think of a more heartbreaking moment if you're a guy and you just spent a lot of time and energy and money trying to find something you thought she would like, and she's like, I don't like it, and so it's like, that's why I say get her involved. It'll be fun for everybody, and that's how you avoid those scenarios. But I learned from that, in my young years. Seeing that, I realized that when I did it on my side, I always want them to be involved, or I asked a lot of very smart questions around trying to figure out what she likes, what she wants to do. But I always recommend we involve the women, because it makes the experience even cooler too. I try to make the guy seem like the coolest guy in the world. And then, for the partner, I try to make sure I know exactly what their needs are, their wants are, and then we kind of go through the process together.
Love it.
Yeah.
Being in a position now where you've sold to people across the world.
Yeah.
How do different markets change the way you go about your business, go about your process? And then more so like highlight how different individuals and customers in different markets react differently to what you do and sell.
My opinion is that if you want to be a good business, you have to start at the customer experience and work your way backwards. And so I took a really serious look at the beginning about what I want my ideal customer experience to be. And so luckily, to answer your question, my process is fairly similar no matter where you are in the world, because there's a lot of attention I place on you, your story, what we're making. Like, there's a lot of ways that I understand your needs and wants. And then just my eye level of service is like, consistent follow-up. Making sure you know exactly what you're getting into, make sure you're happy. And so what I found is that across the world, across the States, wherever you want to put it, people love feeling catered to. People love a private, type of experience. Like earlier, everybody wants a guy, right? So when you have a person that you can call and they really make you feel like, oh, hey, I'm looking for this, that, and the other. And they're like, okay, I get it. They ask you all the right questions. They take care of you. They follow up. They're consistent. You have a great experience. And then that, in my opinion, you can charge almost what you want, because you're giving people a service that's hard to replicate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I see that. And we talked off camera a little bit too about how you spent a lot of time in Miami as well. How does the environment or culture there play a role into what you're doing today? How does that shape?
Miami's kind of like a flashy city, and what I find interesting in Miami is that there are people that are like flashy and flexing, but then there's people that have like really awesome taste. Like, I've met some people that have like really unique, really interesting taste. And so those are people that appreciate the value of things. I've met a lot of art collectors, jewelry collectors, car collectors. I mean, you name it, whatever it is, but people that like have hobbies that are based on, their interest. And so that's really informed my ability to kind of cultivate how I move through the world. And I just enjoy going there. I mean, it's just a fun city. It's hard to have a bad time in Miami.
What are some of your favorite spots in Miami, dining wise?
Dining wise, I don't want to make it hot, man, but I'll tell you some of my favorite spots. So I'm in my 30s, and so I'm not doing so much of the like partying restaurants anymore, but there's a few I like. I've always been, it might be a little taboo, but I've always liked Sexy Fish. Like, I think it's fun. The music's cool. It's just a fun looking restaurant. But from a dining experience, there's a restaurant called Ziru. It's a Spanish restaurant, also in Brickell. I love that place. Their tasting menu is always amazing. Doya, it's a Mediterranean restaurant in Wynwood. Best octopus I've ever had. Le Basilic in where is it? South Beach, French restaurant. I love French food. It's just a restaurant that wants to be a good restaurant, man. And so that's those are some like really, really good ones that aren't necessarily like you're going there to be like a cool celebrity or whatever. It's like, it's just all based on, you want good food in Miami? This is good food in Miami.
Love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're conditioned to see what we hear online and through social. And
Yeah.
I like those recommendations.
Yeah.
I think one thing that was really intriguing to me about your style and what you do and really interested me was you try to intertwine things like fashion and art into your profession and career, which I think is very unique, very bold. What inspires that, or like what are some like unique aspects that you were just sort of naturally doing, but you didn't know until like you were in it, made you special in that regard?
I don't necessarily know if I ever did it consciously, but I've always understood that people buy from people they like, right? And when you're in a service like mine, or any service that requires you to have, a little bit more personal, like you're representing the brand, I think people want to know the kind of person they're dealing with, and so, to your point earlier, like if I'm gonna buy a suit, I don't want to buy a suit from somebody who I don't think is very stylish, right? It's like I'm buying clothing from you, so I want to believe in your style. And so if my brand is about making elegant and timeless and tasteful jewelry, I want you to think that I'm elegant and tasteful, those are things that I need to come through. And so like these are things I really love in my life, and I've just tried to cultivate my business around it. Like I've always been an art lover, I've always been a music lover. I've always tried to dress well, and so I think that that comes across when I talk to my clients, and then when we talk about whatever the thing is that we're making, they trust my opinion because they see that I live it.
Yeah. Keyword there, trust. I think trust is extremely important when it comes to your line of work, for sure. People are spending extreme amount of money oftentimes. And like you mentioned, they want to buy from somebody they like. They want to buy from someone that's credible.
Yeah.
They want to buy from someone they feel comfortable with.
Yeah.
You've obviously done a good job of that, right? You have a strong Rolodex of celebrity and athlete clients.
Yeah.
When did that kind of start for you? How did it start?
It started through referrals.
Yeah.
Like I said, everybody kind of wants to know a guy, right? And so again, at some point, somebody's gonna ask, and everybody, you should talk to this guy. So like, if you work in jewelry long enough, you'll get an opportunity to work with somebody of note, right? Whatever that means to you. And then again, care about the experience. So I've always cultivated the experience, the relationship, right? And so when I work with celebrities, whatever it is, I try to be discreet, I try to be attentive, and then I just try to do a really good job. And that travels very quickly, And so I've been lucky to work with all types of cool celebrities, from like athletes to actors, entertainers, whatever it is, as well as like business people as well, And so this arm of my business has all been built based on referrals. It takes a long time for somebody to give you trust. But I think that if it's coming from somebody who you already trust, you're like more than halfway there, right? And then it just comes down to you to like execute appropriately.
Yeah, 100%. What are things people could do with their current clientele or some of their early customers to help push or promote the idea of referrals, right? Like even when I first started, and I still feel like this every day, oftentimes I don't want to push my current clientele for referrals because I either feel like, A, I don't want to like push the envelope. B, I feel extremely grateful to have you as a client already in any capacity. Yeah. And I don't want to feel like I'm ever asking for anything.
There's two ways you do it. One, I think you shouldn't be afraid to ask for a referral, right? And so like if I just did a good job for you, like at the end, I'll be like, hey, if you really enjoyed this, I would appreciate if you would refer a friend. Yeah. And that will generally lead to something. And then two, follow up every so often. We're coming around to the holidays. I send my clients a little text and I'll be like, hey, happy holidays, hope you're having a good time. And so that's not necessarily a referral, but that tells them that they're top of my mind. So I would hope that when the opportunity comes, I'm top of their mind, and that works like, super, super well, But again, for me, I'm a little bit different. My best referral is the jewelry that I make. And so like when I make a great piece for somebody and they wear it, people ask about it and then my name comes up, right? And so that to me has led to so many sales just from like doing a cool piece of jewelry. And that works really well. But again, to answer your question, don't be afraid to ask, especially when you complete a good job. Don't be afraid to ask.
Yeah, I feel like you just got to be straight up with it.
Yeah, there's no shame in it, man. I mean, people understand it. We're a small business. We're trying to grow. We're trying to really take a personal interest in our clientele. And so asking your clientele to also pour back into you is not weird. You know, is there any good client would not be like, why would you ask me for they're like, of course. Yeah. When I have a friend, when it makes sense. Yeah, of course.
Understood, for sure.
Yeah.
What are you making the most of nowadays? Like, what are you most passionate in creating, and what are you selling the most of?
Engagement rings is probably my number one. A lot of people get married. I mean, it's just one of those things that's always going to happen. People are going to get married. And so that is the thing I probably make the most of. I think I'm most passionate about engagement rings because I get to be a part of people's most important moment of usually their relationship, right? Like when you get married, when you have kids, those are like two really big moments, you know, for couples. And so working on the wholesale side, the manufacturing side, I never got to see that. And so now that I'm just client facing, if you will, that's like amazing. Like it excites me when couples that I've made their rings, when they send me pictures of them like proposing or like, you know, celebrated our first anniversary, you know, stuff like that. Like those are things that really make me happy. And so I take a lot of passion and pride into like, I'm a part of this moment in your life.
Love that.
Yeah.
Obviously, I think the jewelry business, to me at least, seems like it's been a pretty traditional business model for a long time. For sure. It's been around for a long time. Mm-hmm. Are there indicators or things that you see within your day-to-day now, and especially with the rise of technology and everything happening so quickly, like where do you see the industry evolving into the next 15, 20 years even?
Well, what I've kind of seen the last couple of years is you see a lot of people taking like the startup model for online businesses. So you'll see they'll come out with whatever 25 different styles, and then they'll just kind of blow up the business online. A lot of marketing, things like that. And I think that's cool. And there's a lot of potential to make money there for sure. However, what I'm thinking is that as much as that's really good, a lot of people with more significant means, they want the personalized experience. And so kind of what I'm seeing is the more budget conscious clientele, they'll go online, they'll shop their ring, they'll literally order it and it'll come to their house, which to me is crazy that you like won't look at a diamond in person, but that's fine. The people with more means, they want to sit down, they want that client experience. And so I think we're kind of in this like weird, you know, teeter-totter of like this online model versus this like private jeweler model. My personal opinion though is that like the big retail stores, in my personal opinion, I don't think they're going to do too well over the years. I think the big retail stores are probably entirely going to rely on watches. That's always been good for big retail stores. But I think from a jewelry experience, I think it's going to be even harder for the big retailers to turn over jewelry, especially jewelry that's like creative, because of that like online model. Yeah.
Interesting. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, everybody's chasing something that feels more personalized, especially when you're spending that much. I mean, it's a direct correlation. You see malls, especially in the suburbs, are closing left and right. Yeah. Those malls are filled by the K jewelers, the Zettos of the world, and all that. And I'm, you know, in my mid 20s, upper 20s now, like I'm not going to buy a engagement ring there. But
the cool thing is that there's big independent stores in a lot of the suburban areas, and I think that they are unique in that they are just kind of like known for doing the great jewelry of their area. But it's like if there are some private jewelers that are popping up in different suburbs, especially here in Chicago, that are doing really good stuff. And I think that once that word really comes out, you can get, because the thing is, being a private jeweler, I can give you a much better experience than a store can. You know, the main issue is that you're stuck by the store. Like you have to come to the store, right? If I'm sitting in your living room and we're having, you know, a consultation, or if I invite you to a nice lunch or something like that, it's just hard to compete with that. And people like that type of stuff, you know? Yeah. So stores have to figure out what they're going to do about that, you know?
Are you able to give people better prices too and kind of undercut the stores? Or
I don't try to undercut anybody. Like I never price compare to a store. Like I would never ask somebody like, what did this store quote you? I think my value is not based in my pricing. My value is based in my experience.
Sure.
But so, I mean, I guess in theory I could, like sometimes I'm sure I'm cheaper than a store, but like, to be honest, I don't really shop like that. Yeah.
Cool. I think a big part of what we talked about as well prior was like the security aspect for sure. And so you're, day, you may not expect it. People are like, oh, Ren, he's selling some jewelry, he's doing this thing. But like we talked about, if you kind of have to be extremely aware, overly aware, compared to people in other businesses or fields.
Yeah.
How has that evolved for you from when you started to like now? How does that differ when you're going to different places? And like, just how does that process work when you're like sourcing security?
Yeah, man. I think when I started,
Not to expose yourself, but
no, I won't give anything that makes me nervous. But I think when I first started, I was just kind of like running and gunning, right? Like you would see me running around the city with like a fanny pack, and there could be 50 grand in there or diamonds or whatever, And after a while, I realized I'm like, this is probably not smart, And so I started to think more tactical about my my environment, about how I conduct myself, how I look, so I my whole thing is just trying to generally look like a normal person, when I'm going places and doing things. And I never make it obvious if I have jewelry. I don't often walk around with big bags or, whatever you want to call it. But I just try to make sure that I keep my back covered, sometimes when I have security. But then at the same point too, I try to not be unnecessary with my goods. Like today we're filming a podcast. It doesn't really make sense for me walking around with expensive jewelry right now because it's not necessary for what we're doing right now.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Have you had any experiences like threatening, alarming experiences?
Oh yeah. Yeah, definitely, man. I mean, there's times where I've been followed. There's times where people have made me very uncomfortable, and I've had to remove myself from the scenario. I've never had somebody knock on wood. I've never had somebody just flat out try to rob me, but I've definitely had scenarios where I see somebody contemplating it for sure, and again, you just have to use your antennas, man. Like when you feel uncomfortable, get out of there, change the scenario. And then I try to control my environment too. So like oftentimes, working with people in different areas, I try to pick where I know the environment where we're operating in. I kind of know what's going on in there. I know where I need to be, but I know how to leave if I need to leave.
Right.
Yeah.
Amazing. What is, exciting you about the next stage of your business?
Yeah.
What are things that you are doing or maybe thinking about as the new year's approaching here to implement as 2026 coming about?
There's so much stuff, man. Like I'm really trying to steer my business into the like really high-end jewelry market. Like I love all things jewelry. I love making everything, but like next year is really about like making even cooler stuff, even bigger stuff. And so that it's exciting to get to work with some of the clientele I have now that give me a lot of creative freedom. And so that's where I really get to kind of express my design knowledge, And then I think just from a business-wise standpoint, like hiring people, that's always fun. Like I love hiring and training. That's when you really get to see if your like SOPs and whatnot like really work. Let's see what else. Traveling more. I'm gonna be a lot more mobile in the coming year, and so that's cool, man. Like when people start like paying you to like go to a different state or different country or something, just like have a conversation. That's where like things get like real spicy, man. They're like really fun. Yeah.
Love that. Amazing. And talk to us about like, how do you continually push the envelope in terms of like sales? How does that continue, right? Is your team extremely deep right now?
No, I don't have a huge team. No, I don't have a huge team. But like when it comes to sales, my whole aspect is I track numbers, right? I pay attention, I track numbers, I sales forecast, I do all the things a normal business should do, right? And so within reason, I should have an expectation of like where I think my sales will be, for a month or a quarter, whatever it is, right? And then I look at that and I go, okay, well, we want to add more people to this. We're at a point where the business can sustain more. What do we do, right? And so all those things earlier, those like, where does my business come from? I double down on those things, right? So for me, if it's like advertising, let's do more advertising, right? If it's I need to attend more events and like network person to person, let's do more of that stuff, And so I love doing that. But like when it comes to pushing sales, you have to look at the numbers. And I think unfortunately, a lot of businesses do not understand how to properly sales forecast, because a lot of businesses don't actually understand where their money comes from. I think depending on your business, it can be more complex, but I think that some businesses have a they have an idea of where they want their money to come from, but they don't necessarily know like what's generating the dollars right now. Yeah.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense for sure.
Yeah.
Or like people get in the hang of just like being insecure about looking into it. They don't want to look into it for sure. Because it exposes the actual work that they're going to have to do to.
Brother, you got to get dirty, man. Like when it comes to, you know, finances, especially, a lot of people are not disciplined, you know, and a lot of businesses are not disciplined and they overspend and whatnot. But like, you got to jump into the dirty work, you know, so like get into those finances, get into those sales and really understand what's going on. But then the big one there too is that there's a lot of ego, I think, around that. And sometimes people are not comfortable with the truth. You know, I think some people have a vision of what they want their business to be without really understanding where they're at. And it's like, you got to do the work to get to where you want to be, you know? And I think the more you try to stay in reality there, generally the faster we move to whatever your goals are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In that case, the numbers are the truth.
The numbers don't lie, man. The numbers don't lie. And like I said, it comes down to everything. It's not just like how much money did you make this month. It's like, look at where your money's coming from. You know, if your money's coming from advertising, well, then logic would tell you should do more advertising. You know, if it's not coming from advertising, do not advertise. You know what I mean? So it's like, just look at what's going on. And then when you have the finances, you have to take some chances.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, calculated risk, 100%. I think another thing that interests me now is like with the rise of AI and digital becoming more and more prevalent.
Yeah.
You see a lot of community-based events popping up. You see a few more in-person things popping up.
Yeah.
I know you kind of ingrain yourself into more
enterprise host events. I do all types of stuff, man. I mean, I think what you're getting at is just that humans want human connection, you know? And so it's like, yeah, there's a lot of AI-based things. There's a lot of digital things, but it's like at the end of the day, sitting down with another person and just like shooting a breeze is like amazing. You know, it doesn't always have to be motivated around a sale or whatever the thing is. Like sometimes just having a literal conversation is like all you need.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was kind of leading in my next question.
Yeah.
Because I feel like a lot of younger individuals don't know where to start. They get daunted by the idea of going to an event, a conference, an expo, whatever it might be. To do something super intimate, could be something with thousands of people. They feel like they are supposed to have this task list or this to-do under there. What would your advice be to someone younger that knows they want to get involved in more in-person community-based events, but doesn't know like what they should do there?
Start small. I think start small. Like for almost any industry, there's some version of a small opportunity in especially living in a big city, like in your local area, right? So start small. So I don't know, let's just say you are, I don't know, sales, general thing. You are a salesperson and you want to get really good at it. There's a lot of small workshops and small events like around the city of Chicago, right? And so it's like, go to one of them and just say hello, right? Like start a conversation. I think people overanalyze what they think should be the outcome. And anytime I have low expectations or no expectations when I go to something, generally the best things happen. You know, I'd be interested in people, we have great conversations, and then opportunities come.
Yeah. I think especially in a city like Chicago, if you're not taking advantage of it, you're doing yourself.
There's almost no point in living in the city of Chicago if you're not going to if you're not going to take advantage of that. I think people get caught up in like, I need to go out and party or go to the coolest restaurant. And it's like, that's great. I love all that stuff. But there's like a whole other side of the city of just like events. You know, we have great museums. Like there's so many places where you can go and meet people or go and get experience about just things in the world. You're missing on like half the experience, man.
Yeah.
How
has that perspective evolved for you as you've gotten a little bit more invested in your career, got a little bit older? I'm sure you liked to party when you were younger.
Yeah.
How have you been able to find that same satisfaction out of doing different things, prioritizing your health?
Yeah.
I feel like we're at a time now where it's never been cooler or more of a priority to be healthy.
Yeah, for sure, man. And I love that too. I mean, for me, the biggest change has just been my brain. You know, I'm interested in, I have a lot of interest in hobbies. And so it's like, really go deep on those interests and hobbies. You know, for me, I like art, right? And so we have some of the best art museums in the world. So I love going there. I love seeing what kind of events are coming up. Check it out. You know, I sometimes go to the Art Institute and just walk to the bookstore and just like look at new books, right? And so stuff like that. So invest in your hobbies. And if you don't have hobbies, you should find some hobbies. And like a big city is a great place to develop hobbies. Like almost anything you can think of, you can do, in a big city. Yeah.
How did you get into diving?
I got into diving. I injured myself in college. I had a back injury, and part of my recovery was in a pool. And like I've always loved water, but I never took that serious. But when you have to spend like every day in a pool for months, you like get real acquainted with water. And so after a while, I would just like do things to just like keep myself occupied in this pool. And then eventually I was like, this is kind of fun swimming around. I'm like, I wonder if it's like this in the ocean. And then I started going to, vacations and stuff, jumping in the ocean, seeing cool stuff. And then I have like an addictive personality. So started watching documentaries and things. And that's where it like went crazy. Cause I was like, oh, I got to see this place. I got to go dive in this place. And so I just started every year, man. I try to go, at least once or twice a year and get in that ocean, man, and do something fun. I got one coming out in January, actually. It should be fun.
Outside of Miami, how important has travel been to you in terms of just like keeping you inspired, keeping you motivated? Like what inspiration have you brought from some of the travel you've done into your business over the past?
Oh, dude, travel is such a big deal. I think just being a human, being an adult, you should travel. You should see the world, because the world is such a vast place and things are so different everywhere. And so for me, I mean, that's been important for my business as well too, because it teaches me to have a different outlook on certain things. I think when you grow up a certain way or you live in a certain area, you just kind of think the way that area kind of thinks, right? And so by seeing different cultures and meeting different people, you kind of get accustomed to like, oh, this is a different mindset here. People value different things here, I love, we're talking about diving. I love going to the Caribbean, and people just generally move slower in the Caribbean. They're just way more chill about like everything. And that's given me a ton of patience just in my normal life. I had a friend who was just in Jamaica, and they had that huge storm, and their house was like pretty seriously damaged. And my friend told me that they were like really chill about it. And they're like, it'll be fine. Like we'll get it taken care of. Whereas somebody like me, maybe I'd be super stressing, but I mean, that level of patience to like watch part of your house get destroyed and just be like, okay, we'll get it resolved. Like you get great outlook on the things that matter, when you travel.
The thing is, they have a better understanding of what is important in life. And I think seeing that through a different lens when you travel is crucial to self-growth and everything like that. Any favorite spots
in the world that I've traveled? Let's see here. So I was recently in Europe. I love Paris. Paris is really fun. I think it's a great city. Let's see here. From the Caribbean, some of my favorite places to travel in the Caribbean are, I like the Cayman Islands. That was fun. Jamaica is super fun. I think my absolute favorite place I've been in the Caribbean is probably Cuba. That was just like the coolest. Yeah, that was so cool, man. That was amazing. I would live there if it weren't so difficult for them to live there. But no, that was really cool. New York. New York is a cool city. Being in like another big city like Chicago, I think it's interesting when you go to New York and just see how different of a city it is.
I think it's more fired up than New York City, I think.
Yeah, I like New York City.
There's just a feeling.
It's fun, man. It's fun. And New York's one of those cities that like, I hate cold weather. Like it's not my thing, but New York's one of those cities that like, no matter what time of the year you go, it's like really fun and really alive. And like, I love New York in the winter. That used to be something I would do is like right around Christmas time, I'd try to go to New York for like a day or two and just see the Christmas energy.
Love that.
Yeah.
Amazing. I want to finish off here with a little bit of advice that we give to individuals that are at any stage in their life, just like looking for a little bit of guidance, that are aspiring to do something more, that want to break out of their mundane sort of routine. What would you say to someone that wants to take that leap, that maybe has an interest in something but doesn't know where to start?
What I would say to them is that your fear of making that jump is false. Like go for it. I think that anytime you have an interest, you should visit that interest. You should explore it a little bit. And so anybody that's looking to jump into a career, looking to jump into an art, whatever it is, I would say go for it. Put yourself out there. You know, I think a lot more people want to see you win than people want to see you fail. And so I get fired up when I see people are like, oh, hey, I'm trying something new. I started a new business, or I'm trying this new passion, whatever it is. I'm like, that's amazing. Like, good for you. And I think generally most people feel that way when people go out and put themselves out there. Like, that inspires people. So I think generally speaking, a lot of people kind of settle into their day-to-day or whatever it is. And so when they see somebody like going for their dreams, that's like exciting, you know? And so go boldly in that direction, man. Don't be afraid. That all that fear is only in your mind, man. It's only up here. You have to go and make that jump. And 9 times out of 10, if you're going to do it, like, really do it. That would be the best advice I would give you. If you're going to jump in. Don't go half step it. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's amazing advice. And one more question as well. I always like to ask this to each guest, but if Ren had to say something to his 18, maybe 20-year-old self, if you could go back and just tell yourself one thing, knowing what you know now at this stage of your life and career, what would that be?
If I were talking to young Ren, I would say jump earlier than you think, right? Like, go for it earlier than you think. And then on top of that, save your money. Yeah, that's probably the 2 things that I would tell young Ren. You know, exactly what I said before. You know, like, you're thinking about something, just go for it. You know, and then just try to be smart with your money.
Love it. Amazing advice. Tell the people where they could find you. Yeah, they could follow you. How they get in touch.
Yeah, man. Check me out on Instagram. That's probably the easiest place. RNNCK. You can find my website, renprivatejewelers.com. All my information's up there. Call me, email me, text me, whatever you want to do.
Amazing.
Thanks, man.
Link Live. That's a wrap, Ren. Thank you so much.
Thanks, bro. Appreciate you, man. Thank you.
Awesome.